mounted booster reel, you must first remove the access panel on the lieutenant's side of the truck. There are no latches or locking mechanisms to contend with prior to removing the panel. The access panel is simply lifted vertically until it clears the rail mounts it sits in. Once taken out, it is best to rest it on the booster reel so a better grip can be attained and a better sense of balance can be maintained before moving it to the roof-mounted storage rack. Once the access panel is secured, you can now feed the booster reel nozzle down the side and have it placed on the nozzle cradle located on the lieutenant's side pump panel, where it can now be used for designated firefighting operations. Once firefighting operations are completed, the nozzle can be fed back up and the access panel is put back into position in the reverse order in which it was taken out. Be cognizant of the fact that while reaching over with the access panel, your center of gravity may change. Be sure to adjust your center of gravity to maintain a good balance and to avoid possibly falling. The roof-mounted booster reel contains 200 feet of hose.
Only transmission fluid is done from the keypad. You still must manually check the engine oil. The radiator fluid is done from the gauge. You can turn the light on, check your fluid. You must raise the cab to check the power steering fluid. Now, you can look in that door and look this way and see the coolant level. If you bend down and you look just right, you can do that or use the gauge. Let's take the cab tilt motor right here with the breather tube. All right, you're right here, right above the center of the hub. So when you submerge that, you've submerged that and contaminated it. Okay? Now, just above that is the frame rail where you have the plastic fan blades. It moves 1/8 of an inch per pump all the way up and all the way down. Takes about 45 minutes. Now, one instance, if you keep on this latch after the cab is up, if you keep pressing on it, it'll build up too much pressure and you can't get the cab down. It won't come down. The cab goes up and you can't get it down. It's got too much pressure on it. Here's how you relieve the pressure. Listen to it. Hear that? You just crack that open till the cab moves down and you've bled the pressure off, and then the cab will go down.
For vehicle information, toggle between the mode and select buttons located on the speedometer indicator. This will give you information such as vehicle mileage, hours of operation, status of transmission and engine oil, among other things. Please continue watching for the full PowerPoint classroom presentation.
Welcome back to the Sutphin family. You've been a long time loyal customer. We appreciate that. Who is South Florida Emergency Vehicles? That's who I work for. We're the Florida Sutphin dealer, an SVI Heavy Rescue, PL Custom Ambulance, full service center, parts, equipment, sales, pump and ladder testing, apparatus training. There's a bunch of stuff I have to go over in here. It's just liability stuff. You'll be picking up on it. You'll be like, God, this guy's obnoxious. It's just required. Sutphin and South Florida pride themselves on the big three: price, quality, service. No matter what truck you buy, they're all put together with the same extruded aluminum, same roll-up doors, same lights, same motor, same transmission, same pump. So it boils down to service after the sale and how the truck is put together, and David and Sutphin pride themselves on that. Who is this guy? I'm Barry Ashman, Battalion Chief, A Shift, Tamar at Iona. I've been at South Florida Emergency Vehicles for 4 years. I was doing new dealer install, put in your flashlights, mount your radios, your TIC, put your antennas in, radios, speakers, all that. And they got to be too busy and had to hire a full-time guy for that. And David's like, I need a trainer guy, so I'm doing the training. I got 37 years in the fire service, a master's degree from Barry University. Iona has been a Sutphin customer since 2002, and I've been at Iona 35 years. We did. till recently, a year and a half ago. And then they decided to go a different direction, and now South Florida does it all. There's been 2 occasions that we've had to shut a station down because we had no trucks. You know, the trucks are out there broken down. We're not their only customer. I get that. But we've actually had to shut a station down because we're out of fire trucks. Our reserves are in service and something else breaks. So this is my little plug here. I got an Incident Command Made Simple Facebook page I run. Been a battalion chief 12 years. I got a bunch of little videos on there if you're interested in incident command. Just how to make the battalion chief's job a little easier, serve your people better. My family has casted me the Sheldon of our family from Big Bang Theory, and I do a fun with command instead of fun with flags. I got helmet stickers up here if anyone wants one. After the presentation, you can come up and get one. This is the Sutphen family. This is Drew. That's his sister Julie. That's been a family company for 128 years. Like any brother and sister, they don't get along sometimes. And he runs Corp and she runs Towers. So the specs on your truck, you have a Cummins L9 450 horsepower motor. The fuel tank is 65 gallons. The DEF tank is 4.5. If you wait till the DEF gets down to a quarter of a tank, that 2.5 gallon jug fills it up perfect without overflowing it. I'll talk about overflowing it later. Transmission is an Allison EVS 3000. The pump is a Hale Q-Max. You have a 750 gallon water tank and a 30 gallon foam cell. The Orlando foam system is called the Orlando system. I will go over that in detail. All right, let's start off with the gauges, the driver's side. You have a fuel gauge over here and a DEF gauge over here. They're on opposite sides of the dash because they look very similar. Full, 3/4, half, and empty. One of them has the fuel pump emblem. The other one has a little hot exhaust DEF emblem. This is your 360 camera. I understand this is your first 360 degree camera. You didn't know when you bought this truck, but you bought a secret drone that follows you around. No, just kidding. We take a picture of your truck with a drone and crop it into software. You got 4 cameras, one on each side, one in the front, one in the back. This view over here is your 360 view. You cannot change that. You cannot move it over there. This view is looking at a bay door right now. It's on the rear camera. Okay? You got a button to go to the front view, left view, right view. In 10 seconds, it will always default to the rear. You can't leave it on the left or the right or the front. In 10 seconds, it's going to default. Left blinker, left side comes on. Right blinker, right side. After 10 seconds, it will default to the rear. This is the button for your camera to change your view. You press the button, it goes from rear to front, left to right. This is your starter and your ignition and your battery switch. It's all in one. So all the way up, it's off. The first click is battery. The second one is ignition. And there's your starter switch. Okay, we'll talk about these gauges. I'm going to go one-on-one with you drivers. You're familiar with the BD gauges that have this little red button here and have one over here. These are Emitech gauges. You have a digital readout right here that's going to give you everything you have up here. Everything you have in a gauge, plus your hour meter and the radiator level. It's going to say H2O level. That's not your water tank. That's your coolant level. And it's going to give it to you in 100%. I'll show you how to get there by scrolling with these 2 buttons here. We'll go through it. All right, every gauge has a warning light. If that gauge falls out of zone or out of range, the red light's going to come on and the buzzer's going to come on, alerting the driver that there's an issue. All right, your typical bank in the brow above the driver is your emergency switch bank for your lights. It has a master, your scene lights. It also has a load manager in there, so if it senses low voltage for batteries or alternator, it'll start shedding non-essential lights. The last one to go will be the light bar. Down to the driver's right on the console, you have these switches here, your Jake brake, on and off, high-low, high-idle, siren and horn and brake. We recommend that you do not run the Jake brake on wet or slippery roads. And as a driver, you should turn it off occasionally to get used to what it's like not having it, instead of waiting until the roads are slick and wet, turning it off and realizing, oh crap, I got to brake a little harder. Next thing you know, you're braking harder than you want, and you could skid. So it's nice to be familiar with the difference of having it on and off. All right, between the driver and the officer up in the brow, you have a bank of switches up here. What you're going to have up here is cab door, compartment door, and deck gun, because your deck gun raises up. These lights do not come on until you take the parking brake off. So if you're that engineer that gets in the truck first because you only got to put your pants on, you take the brake off and start doing your pre-flight check, your pre-trip check. You might want to wait till everyone gets in and the doors get closed, because you're not going to see anything till you take the brake off. So one last time, when you take the brake off, give the lights another look to see. And there's a buzzer, but we all know when the structure fire comes in that we have tunnel vision and we don't see and hear lights. All right, data placard. This is down by the driver's feet below the steering column. This is all the fluids the vehicle takes, how much, what kind. Over here you've got your filters, you got your paint code, your tires, your motor, bore stroke. Over here, maximum tire speed, 75 miles an hour. That was on South Trail's engineer test. What's important over here for you to know is the engine coolant, the chassis engine coolant. You have upgraded silicone hoses that are blue. It's like a $300 upgrade. They'll literally last 20 years. Blue hoses, you cannot put green antifreeze in. Green antifreeze deteriorates and eats the inside of the hoses up. They're going to cause a leak. And then you have to change them all. So you want Cummins approved coolant. If it says Cummins on it, you're going to be fine. Don't put green antifreeze. It's orange, pinkish color. So you'll be good with that. Your GVW placard is on the B-post driver's side, normally where the seat belt would go, but now the seat belt goes in the seat. It's going to have your GVW on there. We recommend that you get the truck weighed once a year, that you don't exceed the GVW, because you keep adding stuff to your truck all the time. It's got your tire pressures on there. It's got your tire pressure size, or your tire size, the VIN number, and the date of manufacturer. All right, this is your regen system. On that data placard, down by the steering column that's over here, is two switches for your regen. That is for your DEF fluid. The normal position for these is the first switch up, the second one is down. The berry nugget I got for you is you got to get up in the truck before you get down out of the truck. Some people have a hard time with this, and they end up taping them into position like Iona, because the guys can't get it right. Went over there the other day, I said, what's the duct tape on there for? Because the guys keep moving the switches. First one is up, second one is down. That's just the directions that are on the steering column right here to show you first one up, second one down. Now, there are two instances that you can inhibit a regen. Now, in this position, up and down, it's going to regen automatically when it senses. The more slow town driving you do, the more it's going to regen. Regening typically takes 10 or 15 minutes. You're going to smell it because you'll smell a pungent odor. We're firemen, we ride with the AC on and all four windows down. When you come to a stop, you'll get this symbol on the dash. That means hot exhaust. Do not park next to a Saturn, a Corvette, or any plastic recycle bins. Don't park next to mulch and mulch beds, and stay off of brush areas, I-75, stuff like that, because it'll start a fire. It gets very hot. Now, say you pull up on a PIO event, you're going to spray some water with some kids, and it goes into regen. It's just a bad time, pungent odor and high heat. So you can inhibit the regen, stop it, by flipping this switch up. 1 second, let off of it. It shuts it off. When you do that, it's no longer in automatic mode. You must do a stationary regen. When you get back to the station, hit stationary regen initiate, push that button down, and do it manual. After that, it goes back in auto mode. Okay, if you disable it and stop it, do a stationary one, it will then go back into auto mode. If you just decide to do a stationary regen and it doesn't need it, nothing will happen. You push the button up and it's going to run a check, nothing will happen. The idle won't go up or anything. Doesn't hurt it, puts it back in auto mode. Now, if you inhibit it and you forgot to pass it on because you're going on vacation next shift, and a week from now they're going to get a check engine light. All right, you call us, hey, check engine light, our new truck is on. We come down, hook the computer up, and find out that, oh, it needs regen. The other way it will inhibit the regen is if it's getting ready to go into regen and you put it in pump, it's going to kick it out. You're not even going to know it. It's not going to give you any symbol. It doesn't tell you on the dash, hey, we're regen. It's only going to give you this light when you're going down the road and you're not moving, like you stop at a stoplight. It's going to tell you high exhaust. You got to move away. Normally going down the road, you might smell it. But if it starts to regen and you hit it in pump, like you're pulling it out in the morning, do a check. You know, when it goes into regen, you get on the apron, put the brake on, put it in pump, it's going to kick it out. You're never going to know it. So what's been happening is it was inhibited. You didn't know it. You didn't do it for the PIO event. It did it on its own. Week later, check engine light comes on. And we've even been to Brooksville. You go up there, plug the computer in. All it needed was regen. So if the check engine light comes on, we want you to do a stationary regen. Pull it out on the apron, away from plastics, initiate the stationary regen, walk away from it. No, this symbol's telling you high exhaust temperature. And you're going to get that symbol when you're not moving on the apron. If you're moving down the road, chances are you're not going to get that symbol. But when you come to a stop, you do. Because there's no air circulating anymore, and it's going to tell you hot exhaust. Did that answer your question? I know, this is a generation 3. This is a, yeah, you can by moving this button right here. You push that safety lock up, push it down for 1 second and let off. And it'll do, it's a manual regen. You're initiating a stationary, not automatic. All right, I'm going to leave this with Chief to laminate and put in the truck. This is just a guide to tell you that, I got that other paper for you too on the governor. Just tell you that high exhaust temperature, most regen occur when you're driving down the road. I got the same one in my motorhome. Takes about 10-15 minutes, goes up to 1100 RPMs, and you can see a moisture spot on the concrete. When it pumps out that DEF fluid, you can smell it. When it's done, it goes down to an idle, and the light goes off. You put your own DEF in. When you overfill this, if you do, because you're sticking a long nozzle down in a black hole, and you can't really tell when it's full till it overflows, the check engine light's going to come on. So don't regen it. If you just overfilled it and the check engine light come on, your next trip down the road till it uses 1 or 2 ounces, the light will go out. So I was filling them SFEV when they come in from Ohio. We top everything off and I'm spilling it and I'm calling Justin, all the damn check engine lights are on. That's because you overfilled it. So just use a couple ounces, it'll go out. Okay, electrical. This is the officer side kick panel. There are 2 brass knurled nuts that go on those rods that go in that little map book holder. What's important inside here are a bunch of fuses that we added to these power bars to give you power. These are labeled. This is under your seat. So you have both. This is under the the passenger seat, the officer. It's going to tell you everything. Battery power. I think all your rocket and stuff is hooked up here, isn't it?
No, rocket's battery hot right up in the...
What's brigade? Rear battery power. So if you have something that's not working, like a tick charger or a flashlight, they're all labeled right there, and you're going to have fuses in there. So we're asking you to check the fuses there first. Pretty simple. That's underneath the driver's seat. You have 2 studs here. You're going to have a cover with knurled nuts. I'll show you the one up top right here. You have this same one right here up on top of the doghouse between the driver and officer. You lift that lid up. This is the one for your front. You've got battery and ignition, and they're labeled. You got wires coming in. This is your Vista override right next to it. I'll get to that. Behind the officer, you have on the jump seat, you have an accessory fuse panel and a vehicle data recorder. This is the vehicle data recorder. This records your starts, your stops, your G-forces. It's also going to record if somebody unplugs the seatbelt indicator because you got a bad seat sensor and the buzzer's driving you crazy. So don't be overriding your safety equipment because Big Brother's right behind watching you. Okay, air conditioner and defroster. They are 2 separate systems between the driver and officer right here. This is only a defroster and a heater. You're never going to get AC out of there. The only air conditioner you have sits on the doghouse between the driver and officer. That's an air conditioner or a heater, but not both at the same time. This is a defroster and a heater. There's a valve underneath the cab that must be turned on if you want this to work. They've opted to leave it turned off today. That's your choice. If it's off, your defroster is not going to work. Here are the valves that are underneath the driver's feet, or sorry, the passenger's feet, the officer's feet. You've got a pressure and a return because that hot water has to make a complete loop. So you're going to have two valves, two for the heater, defroster, and two for the heater or the air conditioner. Okay, and they're labeled front and rear. The front one is the defroster, the rear one is the AC. Now, if it becomes 20 or 30 degrees every now and then in Florida and you decide, hey, we got a long trip to make or we're on standby forever, we want to turn the heater on because it's cold, you raise the cab, you turn the rear heat on. All right, 2 days later when it's 90 degrees here, if you don't turn that off, you're going to have hot radiator core in there. You're going to have the cold air coming off the AC, but before it comes out of the vent, it hits the hot radiator core and warms it up. You're going to reduce your cooling capacity by 50%. So it's not a heater and an air conditioner at the same time. It's one or the other. You got to raise the cab up, turn the valve off. They're quarter turn valves. Right now they're in line, they're turned on. That valve is literally 6 inches away from a 1400 degree turbocharger. Speaking from experience, don't reach down and grab that valve without a glove on. All right, you have a Vista brake. Vista brake does three things. You have to punch in a code to take the emergency brake off, or you have your override right here. That's in that top lid next to that power supply. Push the button in there, and then you don't need to enter a code. We'll also allow you, the officer, to apply the parking brake if the driver has a seizure or an emergency, or he's in the truck and it starts rolling away. You can apply the brake from here. And the third one is if you get out of the seat and open the door within 1 second, it applies the brake. Now, if you want to get out of the seat to look at your front bumper to see if you're clear of an obstacle, it's not going to set the brake off. You have to get out of the seat and have the door open. And it will apply the brake for you. All right, your cab tilt controls. They are on the driver's side front bumper. Okay, you have a eagle that slides out. All right, it's got a safety latch on there. This is not going to work until you slide that eagle out. You unscrew it in the back, slide it out. It's wired directly to the batteries. You do not have to have the ignition or the battery switch on. Now, I will tell you that these are the next generation LED headlights right here. Each headlight, just the headlight, is $350. And you guys have crushed one of these whole bezels on that eagle somehow because it didn't have the override or the safety switch. So not only do you want to make sure the eagle is out, you want to make sure there are no Yeti cups on the front bumper. Yeti cups and these really don't get along because they're up vertical and they do a lot of damage. These are like $1,500 just for the whole bezel. You want to make sure the lid is closed. The lid's got a handle on it that catches that motor siren. So you want to make sure the front bumper's clear when we raise the cab. We will raise the cab out there and do a walk around. All right, let's talk about your cab safety latch. To raise your cab, you lift the switch up. To lower the cab, you hold the switch down. Okay, so it's a up and down switch. Safety latch is this aluminum bar right here that goes into place. It's air operated. You flip the switch and you'll hear and it goes into place. Let's say that your mechanical issue is an air. You have a blown air line. There's no air in the truck. That is not going to work. But the good news is you can reach over there with your hand, pick it up and put it into position if there's no air pressure on it. You got a cab latch on each side of the cab behind the front tire. See that little pin? That pin comes out when those jaws open up to release. When those jaws clamp down, that pin goes in. You do not have to stick your head in the wheel well. You can see it from outside. When we lower the cab, we will make sure that both of those go in. You don't want to be that guy or girl driving down the road and your cab comes up because it wasn't latched. Auxiliary pump cooler. This is what cools the radiator water if it were to get too hot. What do blue hoses mean?
No green.
No green. Right, no green antifreeze. All right, hot radiator water comes in here, goes in this black tube, comes out, goes back to the radiator. Cool pump water, whatever temperature it is, comes in this little line, goes in there, then goes in a 1/4-inch copper coil with about 30 coils. The water never mixes, so the cold pump water is in the coils, the hot radiator water surrounds the coils, it kind of cools it off, sends it back to the radiator a little cooler. All right, the only on and off switch is right here for it. You've got to raise the cab to turn it on and off. We leave them turned on. The water does not mix. You cannot.
Why would you have to turn it on?
You wouldn't have to. You wouldn't have to turn it off. You'd have to turn it off if you had a leak. But you leave it on, so when you're pumping, it's not going to overheat. All the other manufacturers put an on and off valve on the pump panel. Suffolk, that's the way they do theirs. All right, drive through water. Suffolk does not recommend that you drive through water deeper than the center of the hub. I'm not talking about a mud puddle. I'm talking about a sustained road flooded from a storm. All right. Just above the center of the hub, and I'll show you out here, is the cab tilt motor. It's electric hydraulic. It has an oil reservoir with a breather cap. So if you submerge that, you're going to contaminate that. You're going to fill it with water. Just about 2 or 3 inches above that is a frame rail. What sets inside your frame rail? A radiator. What cools that radiator? Big fan blades. Back in the 80s and 90s, these fan blades were metal or aluminum. They're plastic now. So let's heat and cool plastic 1,000 times. What happens to it? Becomes brittle. You introduce water into there, into the brittle fan blades, they're going to break apart and hopefully not go through your radiator. Okay, now we talked about the little readout on the speedometer or the tachometer. All right, that's everything for your motor and your chassis, your air tanks, voltage, hour meter, and water level of the radiator. Transmission is all done from the transmission keypad. Okay? By pressing both arrow buttons at the same time and letting off, you can get your oil level, oil life, all kinds of things. However, the truck must be up to temperature, warm, must be set at an idle for a minute. If you're that engineer that pulls out in the morning, pull out of the bay on the apron, jam on the brake, hit the parking brake, hit the buttons, when the oil's sloshing around, it's going to tell you oil level invalid, it must settle. You're going to get that right there. It has to settle. You cannot be in pump, you cannot be in high idle. You got to be at idle for a minute and run your diagnostic. Now once you do that, if it's not warm enough, it's going to tell you oil temp is too low. You have to hit both buttons to scroll. Okay? First thing you're going to hit is oil level, then oil life, then condition, then filters, and then codes. All your transmission, you check the fluid right from there. That doesn't do anything with the motor, just the transmission. All right, between the driver and the officer up in the brow is your seatbelt indicator. If it's green, when you take the brake off, someone or something is in the seat with a seatbelt on. If it is red, there's someone or something in the seat and the seatbelt's not on. Could be a helmet, could be a Zoll monitor, could be your tablet. They're very sensitive. If you're sitting in the seat leaning on the other one, it's going to make that one go off. All right, tire pressure indicators. All right, these are relatively inexpensive. They're spring operated. There's no battery. There's no calibration. There's no strobe light that flashes. See the little hex head nut on there? All right, I went to work for Sutphen. They gave me keys to the shop, a keychain that had a little wrench on it. I'm like, wonder what that wrench is for. All right, I didn't think nothing of it. Later on that day, he hands me 6 of these and goes, go put these on the truck. And the light went off. I'm like, man, I got a wrench that fits that. So I torqued them babies down, all right? Well, came in the next day and 3 of the 6 tires were flat because I over-tightened them, pinched the O-ring. There's a sweet spot when you take these off to fill it, all right? Tighten it as tight as you can with your finger and your thumb. If you just screw them on there casually, they're going to leak. If you torque them down with the wrench, it's going to be too tight and they're going to leak. Okay? Now, this one with a little bit of red tells you that it's down. It's not at 120. One of your tires has a little red, one of the tire pressure indicators. So it's not exactly at 120. When you see full red, it's down 10% of 120. Now, these are set at 120, so you can't bring your old jalopy fire truck into the, the train and go, hey man, they got the new ones over there. Let's take them off that truck and put them on ours. And no, they won't go on your hunting buggy either. All right, debate in the fire service. Toilet paper over or under? Who's an over? All right. What's the original patent? Anyone know? Over. The original patent is over. Let me ask you this. Does it really matter? Yes. Does it matter to your ass? Does it know, hey, that's an over roll or an under?
100%. Matters to the next guy because he can roll too much. It's all dirty.
Okay. Well, you have the third option, which is you just lay it on top because you're a monster. All right. Here's another debate. Smoothbore fog nozzle. Who's old school fog nozzle? If each nozzle put out 160 gallons a minute and you could apply that directly to a room and contents, not an intact roof that's going to shed the water, that fire's going to go out. Do you think that fire knows, oh, that's a smoothbore nozzle, I'm not going to go out? Nope. If they're both the same, 160, it's going to go out. I find that each one has their own advantages and disadvantages. Like if I'm going into a propane tank that's leaking, I want that big old fog nozzle to give me that protection, But if I'm going up to a high rise where I'm battling friction loss and pressure loss, I don't want that high PSI fog nozzle. I want that smoothbore. So they each have their advantages and disadvantages. All right, this leads up to the real debate. Who here thinks you must stop in the middle on the air shifter when you put the truck in pump? Who here stops in the middle? You? Why? It's what you've been told. It's how you always do it. You can go to YouTube and look at a bunch of videos, and they tell you to do it, but no one ever tells you why. All right. Well, we're going to clarify it then. Here are the instructions right here to put it in pump, and I have set them right here for you. Come to a full stop. Engine to an idle, transmission in neutral, set the parking brake. Move pump shift lever down to pump. See? Down to pump. Nowhere does it say stop in the middle. Okay? Shift transmission to drive. Check lights and speedometer. Place wheel chocks. So, what does the middle position do? It's an air piston in there, so when you're in road gear, all the air is applied to this side. You ever notice that when you put it down, you hear psh? All right? That's because the piston is moving this way. Now all the air is over here. When you put it in the middle, all you're doing is stopping just for a second, halfway, and then you put the air over here, it goes. So, what is the middle position used for? I'm glad you asked that question. This is the hail. All right, this is a sticker. I'm going to blow it up for you. This is what the middle position is used for. Okay, I'm going to go ahead to stop the truck and put the transmission. Right, place truck transmission in neutral. Place pump shift lever in neutral. This is for the auxiliary pump shift override if your truck is so equipped. That is a hail one. So if your air shifter didn't work, if something happened, you go to the middle. Because if you left it in road, when you pulled the handle out and let off, it would suck it right back in. This is the waterous right there. Nowhere in Darley, waterous, or hail does it say stop in the middle. Why is this important? Well, if you're taking an engineer test and that person writing the test happens to have the manual in front of them, and if I write it for you, I'm definitely putting A as stop in the middle. All right? And you put stop in the middle, you're going to get that question wrong. Now, does it matter? Nope. All you're doing is pausing. You're not doing any damage to it. But today, we're not stopping in the middle. We're going all the way down. So that's what the middle position neutral on the pump shift is for. Now, what's important is that you have to pause after you put it all the way down, whether you stop in the middle or not. When you go all the way down, we want you to pause up to 10 seconds. You have to get this first light right here, pump engaged. Today we got it 2 to 3 seconds. So here's what I'm telling you. If you're that guy or girl that slams it down into pump and hits drive, it's not going to go into pump. It's not. And you're going to call us, and we're going to bring the truck in, and they're going to call me in on my off day, and they're going to put this thing in pump for us, and I do it 30 times and it works, and then I go, let me do it quick and see what happens. And it doesn't work. That's what happens when you put it in too quick. So here's what we're asking you. Come all the way down into pump and wait up to 10 seconds. Soon as you get this first green light, you can put it in drive. And we do it today. If it doesn't come on, I'm going to call everybody over. Hey, come over, check this out. At the end of 10 seconds, if you don't get the light, then we're asking you to put it in drive. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get both lights and it's going to go into pump. But that one time that them gears line up perfect, when the sun and moon and Sunday lines up just perfect, it's not going to go. You're not going to get the lights. We ask that you take it back out of pump and start over again, and that'll usually take care of it. So today, all the way down, as soon as you get the green light, you can go to drive. If you don't get the green light, wait 10 seconds, and then go to drive and try it. And most of the time, bam, both lights come on and the speedometer comes up. Okay. There are 2 automatic drains on a Sutphen truck. They don't make an up-north truck and a down-south truck. What I mean by automatic is they automatically open and drain. It's on the front bumper line, and there are 2 of them on the front bumper line because you got a high arch that goes over the axle. You got 2 low points. I'll show them to you. And one on the deck gun. This is the one on the deck gun. It's got the black hose attached to it. I'll show it to you. What's important is on 2 occasions that when we've used the front bumper line on a car fire or brush fire or dumpster fire, you know, once you knock it down, the engineer throttles down to an idle. It has come open and sprayed water out of the bottom. And I'm like looking back at the truck going, where the hell's the water coming from? Do we got a blown line or something? And I end up calling David and go, hey, this little brass thing's spurting out water. He said, raise the throttle a little bit and it goes off. So it's an automatic drain that automatically opens up under low pressure. And on occasion, it has opened up at an idle. So we're asking that you just boop, boop, bump the throttle up a little bit, and it'll shut right off. All right, your foam system. Okay. You have a 30-gallon foam cell that's inside your water tank. So your water tank is not 720 gallons. All right, minus the 30. You have 750 gallons of water and the 30-gallon foam cell. So there's 780 gallons of product in your water tank. Now, this connection right here, you have to slide this collar back, pull the cap off. You're probably going to hook into this discharge right here, number 3. Take your wand with your hose, plug into there. Anytime you plug into here, you got to turn this on or you're not getting nothing out of here. This is a quarter turn. You must turn this on if you want water or foam to come out of here. Water for the flush. Okay? Now, some of your trucks have a switch that opens up to let the foam out of the tank. This truck doesn't have it, but there's a check valve there. So as soon as you open that, you're getting foam out. If you will go out there right now and take the cap off and open that, foam is going to come out just under gravity. All right, so you don't have to open a switch anymore, an air-operated switch to get it out of the tank. Just open that valve, hook the hose up, you're good to go. Now, when you're ready to flush it, all right, this is a quarter turn. It also stops. You're not going to fill the foam tank because there's a check valve in there. Whether you're out of foam or you're still flowing foam, as soon as you turn that on, no more foam is going to come out. You will see soapy water come through your tube. All right? And when it's clear, then your eductor in your tube is flushed out. Wait a little bit longer to get the hose and the nozzle. Now, what's important is we don't want you opening this flush at 200 psi because that's what you run your eductor at. You open it at 200 psi, you're going to blow the hose right off of this, especially if it's the aquarium hose that's clear. If you have that little white or black helix in there that makes it a little stronger pressure hose, you might not blow it off, but you're either going to blow the clamp off or blow the hose out. Go down to an idle when you're going to flush. Just an idle and open that a quarter turn. You don't need to flush it out at 200 psi. Okay, here's your governor. Your governor looks a little different. It's sideways. It has a couple more features on it. You've got a master pump gauge. It's 4 inches for pressure and vacuum. They're up high. You have the same readouts over here. That's your pump discharge, your big 4-inch gauge, your main one. That's going to be your pump intake. This governor is programmed to start off in pressure mode. You do not have to select it. It's ready to go. However, if you want to change modes, you have to hold the other button for 3 seconds to change it. So if you're pumping in pressure and you want RPM, you got to hold it for 3 seconds. Okay? Now you have a preset button and you don't have the buttons to increase and decrease. You have this rheostat here and you just turn it. All right? You turn it faster, it goes up. Turn it to the right to increase, left to decrease. You can hit the red button to go to an idle. You don't have to throttle it down all the time. It's up to you. So let's talk about a couple things that you can get in a readout out here. All right, we did it this morning. I'll do it one time because I don't like to cavitate the pump. But let's say that you started pumping off of tank water and someone came up to give you some water. Well, in that hose there is air, right? And if you don't bleed that air out and that air goes into the pump is going to sense, I'm losing water, right? So it's going to be like your heart and CHF. It's going to try to compensate. It's going to raise, and if it doesn't get water soon, then it's going to throttle down a little bit and not just start climbing and running away, okay? It's going to notice that, hey, I'm not getting any water here. I'm going to try to fix it. Oh, that's not working, so I'm going to lower it down a little bit. As soon as the water gets there, it's going to correct itself. Now, when it notices it's not getting any water, it's going to go in RPM limit mode. And you're going to see RPM limit. In that mode, your preset will not work. But as soon as you give it water, and we're going to do it today, it'll go back to normal. Your RPM light will start flashing to let you know that you're in limit mode, something's going on. Okay? The other indication you're going to get on here is when you're running out of water. Okay, and we're actually going to shut the water off like you're running on your tank and you've run out. It's going to go low water, it's going to beep, and it's going to shut down to an idle. When it notices there's no water, it's not going to try to compensate. It's going to shut down. But when they get you that water supply and it comes back, it'll come back up for you. All right, so when it does that low water, okay, or the RPM limit, your preset's not going to work, okay? You have to hold the preset button and increase it to override that, or hit it to an idle and start over, and that resets it. Or fixing the problem resets it. Get water in the truck. I'm going to leave this sheet with Chief there, just a couple things different. But it looks a lot different, but it's just got some redundant gauges over here to match your pump and intake gauge. Okay, you have electric control valves for your deck gun and your large diameter discharges on the right hand side of the truck. You simply hold the green button down and it opens in percentage, 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way through. Hold it down till it's 100% if you want it open all the way. All your gauges here have flow meters in them. It's the current flow that you see actually right now. That's what you're flowing. It doesn't have a button that'll give you the total. Hey, on this fire out of that discharge, we flowed 800 gallons. It doesn't have that. It just has what the current flow is right now. All right, let's talk about the tank fill and recirculate. I want you to read this right here first. Flow or recirculate water immediately after engaging the pump. Failure to do so may overheat the pump. Anyone here familiar with the old pump packing style? The old pump packing, it was a rope, it had graphite in it, it had slits in it where you'd put it over the shaft and you would alternate those gaps. If you lined them all up, the water would leak out. Well, you would have to change that every couple of months because the water would wash out the graphite and it would just wear out. Well, now they have a mechanical seal. That's a metal seal with rubber in it and a spring, just like your main seal in your car on your crankshaft. And when you burn that up because you ran the pump hot and it turns that thing blue and it melts the rubber, they don't warranty that. But they have to drop the pump transmission in the transfer case to replace that because it goes over the shaft. It's a couple-day job and it's a lot of money and labor. So immediately after engaging the pump, we want you to recirculate water. We want you to recirculate water with a tank fill valve. Open at 10%. Someone asked me today, is there like a notch that hits it? I'm like, no. What we did is we pulled ours out and we painted it with fluorescent paint. Right there, how much we wanted it pulled out. So when you pull it out, you see the fluorescent. You only need to open it, take the slack out of the linkage, just crack it, so you're circulating 10 or 20 gallons a minute. Okay? You can open it all the way, all right, if you need to fill your tank. So one thing you're going to notice with the truck out there is if you're filling it fast, whether you're on a call or you're coming back from a call and going in service, is you might want to be a little aware when it starts getting full to shut down, halfway or even quarter of the way. What happens is when you overfill the tank, the overfill is a 2.5-inch pipe. All right? And when you overfill it, because you're pumping in nearly 600 gallons a minute into there, it overcomes that overflow and then fills the rest of the tank on the inspection hatch and then flows out of the top and goes down the tank. Well, what happens when it goes down the tank is it goes to the back and runs by your ladder rack. It's not going in any of your compartments, but it is going to go where your ladders go, because that's all going through the tank. So you might want to slow down when you start to see the water getting full, and when you see it come out, shut it down all the way. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to make a mess back there. And it's just the nature of the beast, because the ladders are stored back there. They're not on the outside. They go in a compartment. All right, tank to pump valve. Tank to pump valve allows water to go from the tank into the pump. It has two positions, fully open or fully closed. All right. There was a fire up in the middle of the state. They had a Sutphen truck. It was a car fire. They pull the bumper line. They got no water pressure. Captain calls back and says, got no water pressure. What's going on? What's the engineer do? Give him a little more throttle. That's what I'd have done. Captain calls back, says, still got no water pressure, man. What's going on? What's the engineer do? Give a little more water. Captain's like, man, ain't getting no water pressure. Goes over to the truck, looks down and notices that the tank to pump valve is only open halfway. What do you think the captain does? Pulls it open all the way, water hammers the pump, and now because we got a whole bunch of RPM going and no water, when that water gets in there, they water hammered the manifold sits on top of the truck. Other than the discharges come out of the side, so the manifold has got your rear discharges, your bumper line. It connects to two large discharges on top of the pump. It's stainless steel tubing, 1/4 inch, and they blew the end of that off when they water hammered it. So Drew said, you need to put that in your PowerPoint because I warrantied it this time, but I'm not going to do it again. All right, I need to inform you that you opted for the Zygomatic wheel chocks. I need to let you know that when you go to collapse that thing, that there's a pinch point there. If your finger's in there, it's going to hurt. All right. Also need to inform you that these are cast aluminum, and they did not pay anybody $10 an hour at the factory with a file to knock down the sharp edges. So you probably should have your gloves on when you handle these. Also need to inform you that NFPA mandates that you must have a hose barrier over your cross lays. If you have compartment doors, that covers it. You can have a net, a webbing, a cover, a tarp. You have to have something over the hose because, them firemen, they got to have that nozzle right on the edge every morning. I can't be reaching in there to grab my nozzle. It's got to be right there ready. And anyone here lay hose driving down the road when you didn't want to? It's happened. It's happened a bunch. And it happened to an engine. They laid the cross layout, didn't know it, driving along. They go around a corner. There's a van parked legally right there. Hose goes under the front tire, comes nice and tight. Fire hose rubber, right? So it's going to stretch a little bit. And then it gave way and shot. Took little Tiffany, 8-year-old Tiffany on her bicycle. Took her out and killed her. All because the hose fell off the truck. So NFPA said, you're going to have some sort of hose barrier. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. You got to pull the tabs to get to the hose. What I'm telling you is don't take them off, roll them up, and put them under the seat. All right, does anyone have any questions?